All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about a man who truly revolutionized modern manufacturing and management, W. Edwards Deming. And his whole philosophy, well, it wasn't just about making a few tweaks here and there. Nope, it was about a complete and total transformation of how we even think about quality, about productivity, and about people. So let's kick things off with a number that should honestly make any manager out there just stop and think. 85%. Deming famously argued that harmful management practices, the system itself, is the real root cause of about 85% of all quality problems. Just let that sink in. The vast majority of issues, he said, aren't the fault of the workers on the line, they're the fault of the very system they're forced to work in. So who was this guy, W. Edwards Deming? Well, he was a physicist and a management consultant who really made his name after World War II. He was invited over to Japan to help rebuild their shattered economy, and his teachings on quality control, well, they became the foundation for what the world now calls the Japanese quality miracle, which absolutely dominated global manufacturing for decades. And Deming's message, it had this real sense of urgency to it. He saw a deep, deep crisis in Western management, and he wasn't just offering friendly suggestions. He was sounding an alarm. He was adamant that you cannot just buy your way into quality by throwing money at new machines or fancy software. The real transformation, he insisted, had to come from the very top, from leadership. Now, Deming had a really specific definition for quality. It wasn't about being luxurious or gold-plating every single thing. For him, quality meant predictability. It meant dependability. It's something that just naturally flows when your entire workforce is supported by a solid, well-thought-out process. You don't find it by inspecting defects out of the product at the end. You build it in from the very beginning. To get his philosophy across, Deming often used this clever medical metaphor. See, before you can apply any kind of cure, you first have to diagnose the illness. And he truly believed that traditional management was suffering from some very serious and very specific diseases. And here is his diagnosis. Just take a look at number 2, emphasis on short-term profits. Or how about number 3, evaluation by performance, merit rating, or annual review? Deming argued that these incredibly common practices actually destroy teamwork. They build fear, and they get everyone focused on all the wrong things, which prevents any real, long-term improvement from ever happening. But here's the crucial part. Deming didn't just point fingers and list us problems. He spent his entire life developing and teaching the solution. So if these common management habits are the diseases, what did he prescribe as the cure? And that cure was what he called his 14 points for management. But you've got to understand, this wasn't some menu of options that you could just pick and choose from. He saw it as a complete, comprehensive treatment plan. It was a whole new philosophy for transforming an organization from the top all the way down. And he was absolutely serious about this. No half measures. Deming literally wouldn't take on a new client unless the CEO personally committed to putting all 14 points into practice. Why? Well, think back to that 85% number. If 85% of the problem is the system, then just trying to fix worker performance will, at best, only solve 15% of your issues. For Deming, it was all or nothing. Now, we can't go through all 14 right now, but this gives you a real feel for them. Notice how human they are. Drive out fear. Decades before we were all talking about psychological safety at work, Deming was making it a core principle. Or how about this one? Remove barriers that rob people of pride of workmanship. This was a truly radical shift away from a management style based on control and toward one based on empowerment and constant, never-ending improvement. This comparison really just boils it all down, doesn't it? The old way is obsessed with outputs you can count, numbers, quotas, ratings. The Deming way focuses on the inputs and the system itself, on leadership, on the process, on pride, and on a long-term vision. He believed that if you get the system right, the numbers will take care of themselves. But there's another layer here. Underneath all these 14 points, there's a deeper, more theoretical framework. Deming believed that to truly lead a transformation, a manager needed what he called a system of profound knowledge. This right here, this is the intellectual engine that drives the whole thing. It has 4 parts, and they're all interconnected. First, seeing your company as a complete system. Second, understanding that variation in performance is totally normal. Third, a theory of knowledge. Basically, how do you actually know what you think you know? And finally, a real grasp of human psychology. and you can't separate them. They all work together. So let's make this real. Let's apply it to something we all know, the annual performance review. If you look at it as a system, you see it makes people focus on their own individual goals, not the company's. From a psychology perspective, it just creates fear and crushes motivation. And if you understand statistics, you'll see it punishes or rewards people for the normal ups and downs in the system, not their actual skill. See, this is how that profound knowledge exposes the deep, deep flaws in everyday management. So what's the lasting impact of all this? Where did these ideas go? Well, Deming's philosophy didn't just stay in post-war Japan. It has profoundly shaped modern business, probably far more than most people even realize. His influence just spread across the globe. In 1951, Japan created the super prestigious Deming Prize. By the 80s, American companies, like the makers of the iconic Louisville Slugger baseball bat, were adopting his methods and seeing huge success. And today, his core principles are just baked right into modern methodologies like total quality management and Six Sigma. So at its heart, Deming's entire philosophy comes right back to this one powerful idea: the system. Everything is interconnected, from your suppliers to your internal processes, all the way to the end customer. You simply can't fix one part in isolation and expect everything else to get better. To truly change the results, you have to understand, and then you have to change the entire process. And that leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful thought from Deming himself. If you don't like the results your organization is getting, don't blame the people. You have to look at the system. Because that system, for better or for worse, is perfectly designed to produce exactly what it's producing right now. So the question he leaves us with is this: what are you going to do to change the design?